Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another quick Flutter tutorial. In this one, I'm going to show you how we can code a Notes app in the Apple style. So some of these widgets that are in the iOS style is called Cupertino widgets. So let me show you how to do this by jumping into the code. This tutorial is sponsored by Rotato. Now I get a lot of questions about how I show off my apps in a cool way in my intros, and it's through the help of a software called Rotato. They have pretty much every device you can think of to use as a mockup, and my favorite part is the ability to control the motion to make it swivel and rotate in any way you can imagine. So make sure to use the code Mitch at the checkout to get a little discount. And thanks Rotato for sponsoring this video. So I've opened up a brand new Flutter project, and just to keep everyone on the same page, in my main function I'm running my app, which brings us to this home page, and I've got that in a separate folder called Pages, which should give us a blank scaffold. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create a new folder called Models. And let's create a model for a particular note. So I'm going to create a class here. And let's just store 2 bits of information for a particular note. So I want to know the ID and also the text. Cool, and let's create one more file called note data, and so this will handle all of the operations between each of the notes. So the first thing we're going to need is an overall list that contains all of these notes. Let's have a method to return the notes, and the 3 important functions here are the adding a new note, updating the note, and deleting a note as well. So let's just start filling this out. So let's have a list of notes called all notes. And so just as an example, the default first note can be like ID number 0, and the text can say just first note. So in this list, we can start storing other notes. Now let's create a method to get the notes. So we can say if the user types get all notes, then we can return this list. Okay, what about if I want to add a new note? Well, first of all, I need to know what the note is that I'm adding, and let's just add it to our overall list. So what about if I want to update the note? So this one, we're going to again need to know what the current note that we're updating, and we also need to know the new text that we're going to update the information for, right? So the first thing is in our list, I need to go through and find the relevant note. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick for loop here, going through from 0 to all notes, and let's find the relevant note. Okay, so this is where the ID comes in handy. And so once we've found the relevant note, just replace the text with the new text. Sweet, which brings us to the last operation, which is deleting the note. This one is just use the remove operator. Sweet, so now if we come back to our homepage in our scaffold, let's start to decorate up the UI. So I'm just going to start with a column and say notes. And you can see it's very cornered in the top. So I'm just going to use an app bar just to space this out a little bit. And let's add some padding. And I like 25. I feel like this notes heading could be a lot bigger as well, maybe bolder. Okay, cool. So now for us to be able to access the notes class, we're going to use the provider for the state management, which I've used in the previous few apps. So just a little setting up we have to do is after you saved it in your pubspec.yaml, come to your main.dart file and let's wrap our material app in a change notifier provider. And so now we can give it the data class that we are looking at. And for the builder, just return our app. Cool, so if you come back to our note data, then we have to extend the change notifier and also just notify the listeners after every important change. So adding a new note, updating a new note, and deleting a note, every time that happens, I want to notify all the listeners. Okay, so then we can grab this entire scaffold and wrap it in a consumer widget so that we can consume this data. And you can see this value tag. So this is what we can use. Like I said, I wanted to go for a more of an Apple style. So let's use the Cupertino list section, which is actually one of the new, there's one of the new widgets from Flutter Forward. And you can see here it's got an error because the children can't be 0. So we have to put some children in there. And there it is. Now it doesn't look super nice. One thing I'm going to do is the inset grouped. I think this is what we need. There we go. And so you can put a bunch of these notes together and it kind of gathers in a nice iOS style. So this is what I want to do. Cool. Now if I just get rid of this app bar, I don't think I need that. And for the padding, let's add it on the left, but also on the top. And let's cross-axis align this to be at the start. Cool. So yeah, I want my notes heading to be there. Now you can see the rest of the background color is actually still white, but I want it to be specifically that Cupertino background color. And now in the children of this list, we don't want to just manually put these in, right? I'm going to have to generate a list and we're going to return the list tile and we have to specify the length. So how many do we want to generate? If I come back to my consumer, let's give it the note data. So now we can actually access the information. So I can say like value and then get all the notes and the length of it. Cool. And now instead of just saying LOL, we can say get all the notes and look at the individual index and let's get the text. Cool, and there it is. You can see if you come back to the note data, that this is the first note that is being displayed. Cool, so I can create another one and there it is. Okay, so I think we can just get rid of this app bar now, and I want to have a floating action button to create a new note. There it is. Now let's change up the styling of this because I want to make it look more iOS style. Cool, so if I click this button, then I want to create a new note. How are we going to do this? So first of all, we want to create a new note and then we also want to delete the note as well. So let's try to fill this out. So first of all, we would need to know the new ID. So this will just be the latest number. So however long our list is going to be our new ID. And for the text, I'll just give it a blank string. Cool, then let's automatically go to the editing the notes page, which we haven't created. Let's do that now. And so when we go to a new note page, let's first of all know which note we're looking at and also if this is a new note or not. Okay, so this editing note page, let's create now. Cool, now when we create this editing note page, let's require two things, right? So the note that we're editing and also if this is a new note or not. Cool, so once we did that, we can come back to the home page and we can fill this out. So we have to give it the new note and also, is it a new note? Let's say true. Okay, cool. Now let's just quickly fill out this delete note method. So with a given note, let's just go to our provider so we can access our note data methods. And we should have the delete node. Cool, so now we can actually go to the new page if we click on the floating action button. Let's slowly start to fill out our editing node page. Now make sure you go to your pubspec YAML and we have to give it this Flutter quill package. So make sure to import that at the back. And so this one is a rich text editor. Okay, so now we can create our quill controller at the top. Let's just go for the basic option. And in the initial state, let's first of all load the existing note if there is. Let's first get the document and in the first row, which is 0, let's just put in the widget notes text. Okay, and then we can give this information to our controller. And then just a couple extra methods here. So adding a new note and updating an existing note. So for adding a new note, let's first of all get the text from the editor that the user had typed. And then let's just call our provider method. Sweet, so that should do it. And let's just comment this out. Okay, sweet. And then the last one for updating an existing note. So very similar, let's get the text from the editor, but the update note is what we're going to use and give it the new text. Sweet. Cool, so let me know below if any of this you need any help with. I'm happy to explain in the comments. But let's go to our scaffold now, and in the body, let's create a big column. And so at the top, we want the toolbar, and at the bottom, we want the editor. So I'll show you what this looks like. We can give it our controller. And so that toolbar with all of those options is what Quill provides. Now, just to keep this real simple, I want to get rid of most of these. So I'm just going to go from the basic toolbar and just show false for pretty much everything, except for the undo buttons. Okay, so you can go through and show which one you want for yourself, for your own app, but I'm just gonna show false for most of these. And then in the bottom, let's do an expanded container. And just to show you, if I put in a red color, you can see which space this is occupying. Now I wanna go for a Cupertino color to make it consistent with our app. First of all, in the child, let's bring in the Quill editor. Okay, sweet. So I'm going to decorate this a bit. So let's put some padding 25. And also this button here, right? If we go to the leading button, let's attach a function to this button. On the on pressed, we have to do a little bit of logic here. We have to know if this is a new note or if this is an existing note, because if it's a new note, then we have to add it on to the overall list, whereas the existing note, we just need to update one of the notes, right? So let's just do a quick check here. Is it a new note? And also, is the document not empty? So if it's a new note and there's stuff written in, then let's add a new note. Okay, and the ID is just going to be the next number up. And I just realized for adding a new note, if it's a new note, the ID should always be the same. So I'm just gonna optimize this code a bit. The ID should always just be however long the list is. Cool, that cleans it up. Else, if it's an existing note, then let's just update. Okay, so you can see this list here. If I write some stuff down and I press back, looks like nothing's happening. And that's because we need to pop this box. Sweet, there it is. Now you can see it's not really getting saved for some reason. Cool, and the reason is I found a little bug here. For the is new note, we should just pass through is new note. There we go. Cool, so our new note gets saved. Now let's have a way to go back into one of these existing notes. So let's go to the Cupertino list tile, and on the on tap, let's go to the note page, and we have to give it these two parameters. Right, so the note is this one. And is this a new note? False. So let's go to this, and there it is. You can see the existing notes are in there. And then if I update it, then yep, it gets updated. Sweet, so that's pretty much done. Now let's just decorate this up a little bit since we got the functionality working. So remember the background color, I want that Cupertino system background. And this app bar, let's make it transparent. Okay, cool, so looking much better. Now it's time for some local storage. So if I save this and I restart the app, it'll always just go back to the default, right? So we want the user to be able to save the notes now. So we need to go to our pubspec.yaml and import these Hive packages, which is my favorite local storage solution. Let's go to our folders and create another folder called data. And let's call this a Hive database. And so I've created some of these databases in the last few tutorials, but let's do another one here. So if you haven't used Hive before, that's fine. You can follow along with this. So the first thing we have to do is reference our Hive box. And then let's have a couple extra methods here. So the first thing is actually to go to your main.dart file and make it an asynchronous function. And we have to do two things. We have to initialize Hive rather, and then open a Hive box. And here you can call the box whatever you want. So let's call it node database. And then coming back to our Hive database class, we can say, let's make sure to import it first. Open the box, which we called it node database. And so now it's stored in our variable called myBox. And then let's fill out some of these basic methods here. So the first thing is to load the nodes, right? I'll explain as I go along, but let's check in myBox. Let's see if there's anything in the all nodes key. Now, if this is not null, meaning there is already some nodes in there, then let's put all of those nodes in a list called just saved nodes. And then let's do a quick for loop and create individual node objects out of these. Okay, so in Hive, we are going to store just purely strings. Okay, so when we read the information for these strings in our Hive box, let's convert it into our node objects that we created. Okay. So let's give it the ID and let's also give it the text. And then we can add this individual node to our list of formatted nodes. And I say formatted because we can now use it in our app. Cool, now saved nodes is similar, but it's going to be the reverse. Okay, so let's think about this, right? If I'm given a list of nodes called all nodes, then just as an example to make it a bit clearer for you, the way I want to store it is as a list that has another list of pair values. So like ID 0 and first node, ID 1 second node. Because in Hive, we can't really store objects like custom objects, like we created node. We can't just save node. We have to break it down into the primitive data types. So that's what we're doing here. So we're going through each node in all nodes, and we're going to just grab the ID and the text and just save it in this list as a strings. So I'm just going to restart this app. And it's not saving, and that's because we didn't even call this method anywhere. So if you come back to our node data.dart file, let's link this to our Hive database. So I'm just going to create an instance of the Hive database. Let's just call it DB for database. And let's first of all initialize the list. So you can now call from DB and press dot, and you can see that load nodes. And same thing for the home page, which is our main page at the beginning. In the initial state, let's just make sure to initialize nodes, okay? Because the user might have some nodes saved. Cool, and we get this bit of an error where it says the children length has to be greater than 0. So it looks like right now, the way we saved it, there's no nodes in our database. So I'm just going to do a quick check here. Let's get the length of the nodes, and if it's 0, then let's just return a text saying nothing here. And otherwise return the group of list. Sweet, there it is. Now let's just decorate this a little bit just to make it look kind of nice and seamless. Okay, so if this is the first time that the user actually opens the app up, then we want to give some default nodes, right? So let's put these in our load nodes method, right? So if there's existing nodes, then we'll just return that. Else, we'll return a default first node, just saying first node. Cool, so everything should be doing well. Now let's have an option to delete the button. So if you come back to our Cupertino list tile, let's go to the trailing and let's put in a delete icon here and also fill out the delete method. Cool, there's our bin button and we can now click and delete and create. Sweet, and that's everything. So our Apple Notes is done in a sort of iOS style. I wanted to make this especially because in the recent Flutter Forward event, they released this widget called Cupertino list section, and so I just wanted to make an app that looks like that iOS style. So hopefully you learned something in this video. Let me know if you have any questions, and by the way, leave me a purple heart in the comment if you've made it this far. So good job, and let me know, like I said, in the comments below if you have any questions about any of this code. I'm happy to try to help, and let me know what I should make next. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.